Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice, where we take up the questions from the Hindu and the Indian Express and curate them according to the needs of prelims examination. The themes for our discussion are listed on your screen.
Now moving on to the first article of the day that has featured in the Indian Express on page 12, basically talks about the contribution of KHELO in the poverty estimation. Now UPSC in the previous year has also asked questions related to poverty. We'll try to understand how a question on poverty estimation can be framed. In 2019 also UPSC has asked a question related to official poverty line. A practice question in this regard says, with reference to poverty estimation in India, consider the following statements. The first statement here is Tendulkar Committee suggested for state-specific poverty line. Now this statement is incorrect, as the Suresh Tendulkar Committee, which was constituted in 2009 to review the methodology for poverty estimation, recommended uniform poverty line basket. Tendulkar Committee computed new poverty line for rural and urban areas of each state, which is based on uniform poverty line basket. Moving on to the second statement, it says the Alag Committee recommended separate poverty line basket for rural and the urban areas. Now this statement is correct, as the Alag Committee, which was constituted in 1979, constructed a separate poverty line for rural as well as urban areas on the basis of the nutritional requirement and the related consumption expenditure. Poverty estimate for subsequent years were to be calculated by adjusting the price level for inflation. Moving on to the third statement, it says Lakkadwala Committee recommended uniform poverty line basket as opposed to separate poverty line basket. Now this statement is again incorrect. The Lakkadwala task force assumed a basket of goods and services that is used to calculate the consumer price index for the industrial workers as well as for the agricultural laborers to reflect the consumption pattern of the poor. Thus, it recommended state-specific poverty lines should be constructed and these should be updated using the CPI in urban areas as well as the rural areas. Now, the question further says which of the following statement given above is or are not correct. And as statement 1 and 3 are not correct, the correct answer for the given question will be option B. Further, regarding the poverty estimation in India, it is a method which is used to estimate poverty in India based on income or consumption levels. And if the income or consumption falls below a given minimum level, then the household is said to be below poverty line. Niti Aayog currently performs the poverty estimation calculation in India on the data which is made available by the National Sample Survey Office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Moving on to the previous year question, the correct answer for the previous year question is also option B. Moving on to the next article of the day that has also featured in the Indian Express, basically talks about the Bharat Bond ETF. Now the Bharat Bond ETF is the India's first corporate bond exchange traded fund and was recently subscribed 2.8 times. Now we'll try to understand a practice question in this regard, as UPSC can ask questions related to capital and the money market, as it has previously also asked questions related to bond, debentures, the effect of inflation on their value, etc. And such a question was seen in the year 2013 when UPSC asked about the position of debtors and bondholders. Now the practice question here says, with respect to exchange traded fund, consider the following statements. The first statement here is, it is a type of fund that holds multiple underlying assets rather than only one like a stock does. Now statement 1 here is a correct statement, as ETF is a type of fund that holds multiple underlying assets. Further, it is a type of pooled investment security that operates much like a mutual fund. It can be structured to track anything from the price of an individual commodity to even a large and diverse collection of security. Thus, it can be said that ETF contains many types of investment which include stock, commodities, bonds, or mixture of investment types. Moving on to the second statement, it says ETFs, unlike mutual funds, are traded on an exchange and trade only once per year after the market close. Now, this statement is incorrect as the ETF share price fluctuates all the day as ETFs are bought and sold, and thus they are different from mutual funds which are only traded once a day after the market closes. The question for this is which of the statement given above is or are correct, and as only statement 1 is correct, the correct answer for the given question will be option A. Further, the correct answer for the previous year question is also option A. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured in the Hindu basically talks about the 3 Himalayan medicinal plants that have now entered the IUCN Red List. Now, UPSC in the previous year has asked questions related to various plant species, animal, which were in news by asking their scientific name. And thus, we need to understand the topic as UPSC can on similar line ask the question in future. As we can also see from here that UPSC asked the question on the scientific name in 2019 also. A practice question in this regard says which of the following pairs are correctly matched? Plant species and the medicinal purpose. The first plant species here is that of patwa. Now it says it is used for treatment of bronchial disorders. Now this is incorrectly matched as patwa is a perennial shrub and is endemic to Uttarakhand. Now the essential oil that is extracted from the leaves of patwa possesses strong antioxidants and can be promising natural substitute for synthetic antioxidants in the pharmaceutical industries. It is not used for the treatment of bronchial disorders. Now the second plant species given here is that of Himalayan fritillary. Now it is matched with substitute for the synthetic oxidants, and as we can see, substitute for synthetic oxidants is that of patwa. Now the Himalayan fritillary can be used for the treatment of bronchial disorders and that of pneumonia. The plant is also a strong cough suppressant as the assessments made by the IUCN recommends. The third plant species mentioned here is Salam Panja and it is matched with to cure dysentery and gastritis. Now this is correctly matched as Salam Panja has been extensively used in Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani and other alternative system of medicine to cure dysentery, gastritis and even disease like stomach aches, chronic fever and that of cough. The question further says, select the answer from the code given below and as only third code is correctly matched, the answer for the question will be option D. Further, the answer for the previous year question is also option D. Now moving to the next article of the day, it talks about the harassment and the assault on the RTI activist at the CAG office for filing the application. Now this topic becomes important as it involves two subheadings that is RTI and that of CAG. A question on CAG can be framed in this order as UPSC has been asking questions related to various constitutional and non-constitutional bodies in the previous year. And such a question regarding the Election Commission was also seen in the year 2017. Thus, under the polity section, this area becomes important for us. The practice question here says, consider the following statements regarding Controller and Auditor General of India. The first statement here is, the President prescribes the duties and the powers of the CAG. Now, this statement is incorrect as Indian Constitution under Article 149 authorizes the Parliament to prescribe the duties and the powers of the CAG in relation to the accounts of Union and that of the states. And accordingly, the Parliament has enacted CAG Duties, Powers and Conditions of Service Act 1971. So it is the parliament that prescribes duties and power of the CAG and not the president. Moving on to the second statement, it says it upholds the law of parliament in the field of financial administration. Now this statement is correct, as the role of the CAG is to uphold the Constitution of India as well as the laws that are passed by the Parliament in the field of financial administration. The office of the CAG is important to hold accountability of the executive to the Parliament in sphere of financial administration, and this is done by presenting annual audit reports. Moving on to the third statement, it says it performs legal and regulatory audit only. Now, this statement is incorrect because, in addition to the legal and the regulatory audit, which are obligatory to be done on the part of CAG is also provided discretionary powers to conduct proprietary audit. The CAG can conduct a proprietary audit to look into the wisdom, faithfulness, and the economy of the government, and to comment on the wastefulness and extravagance of any expenditure that have been made by the government. The question further says which of the following statements are correct, and as only statement 2 is correct, the correct answer for the given question will be option C. Further, the correct answer for the previous year question is option D. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured on page 2 of the Hindu basically talks about the National Green Tribunal. As the National Green Tribunal has directed Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to constitute a three-member panel to formulate safeguards and guidelines to be followed by the state environment impact assessment authorities. Now, UPSC in the previous year has asked questions related to various tribunals, their working, and a question related to the National Green Tribunal only was asked by UPSC. So, tribunals becomes important for us from the perspective of prelims. As in 2018 only, UPSC asked about the difference between the National Green Tribunal and that of Central Pollution Control Board. A practice question in this regard can be framed and it says, consider the following statements regarding the National Green Tribunal. The first statement here is, it has been provided with original and appellate jurisdiction. Now this statement is correct, as National Green Tribunal is a specialized body that was set up under the National Green Tribunal Act of 2010 and has both original and appellate jurisdiction. Further, the body has the power to enforce any legal right that is related to environment. Now statement 2 is also correct, as the tribunal has been given the power to enforce any legal right relating to the environment. Moving on to the third statement, it says it has been endowed with suo motu powers and is guided by the Code of Civil Procedure. Now this statement is partially correct, as though the National Green Tribunal has been given the powers of the suo motu, but it is not guided by the Code of Civil Procedure, but rather than is guided by the principles of natural justice. So statement 3 here is incorrect. The question further says which of the following statements are correct, and as only statement 1 and 2 are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option C. Going a little deeper, we'll try to understand that NGT deals with the civil cases under the 7 laws of environment. The first law is the Water Act of 1974. The second is the Water Cess Act of 1977. The third is Forest Act of 1980. Fourth is the Air Act of 1981. Fifth is the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Sixth being the Public Liability Insurance Act of 1991. And seventh is the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Moving on to the previous year question, the correct answer for the previous year question is option B. Now moving to the last article of the day that has featured in the Hindu basically talks about the KHELO India scheme or the KHELO India Games, as the government on Friday said that it was planning to promote internationally the traditional India games like Malkham, Thangta, Yogasana, Gatka, Kalpatya, etc. Now, UPSC in the previous year has asked questions related to various government schemes that were in news, and hence this area becomes important for us as UPSC can ask a question related to various government schemes in future also. As such a question was seen in the year 2016 where the UPSC asked about the sovereign gold bond scheme that was in news at that time. The practice question in this regard says consider the following statement regarding the KHELO India scheme. Statement 1 here is it is a centrally sponsored scheme. Now this statement is incorrect as KHELO India scheme is a central sector scheme and not centrally sponsored. Moving on to the second statement, it says under it financial aid of 5 lakh annually is provided to athlete for 8 years consecutively. Now this statement is correct as under the scheme 8 years of annual financial aid an amount of rupees 5 lakhs has been given to the talented athletes to promote sports. Also, the KHELO India scheme was formed by merging three schemes that were earlier present, that is the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Abhiyan, the Urban Sports Infrastructure Scheme, and the National Sports Talent Search Scheme. All these were merged and KHELO India scheme was launched. Further, moving on to the previous year question, the correct answer to the previous year question is option C.